You're listening to Boss Ladies and Babies
with Mickey and Megan,
two best friends adventuring through motherhood,
building our careers,
and not losing our shit. Welcome back to Boss Ladies and Babies. This is Megan.
And this is Mickey.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, everybody. Happy... it's October, which means it's Halloween month at my house.
Spooky season.
We are so into it. We've already watched Hocus Pocus. We got like a bunch of our decorations out today. I'm so ready for fall and Halloween, which is... It's like the little glimmer of excitement, even though we don't have to talk about trick-or-treating because that's probably not happening, I'm assuming, right?
I know. I mean, I don't think we're going to if it does happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're excited for Halloween too. October is like probably my favorite month aside from December, but I just love this time of year. But October is also Infant Loss Awareness Month, and that kind of sparked our topic for the episode this week. And it's really ironic, I guess, with everything that's happening with Chrissy Teigen going on social media, and just kind of like all the backlash that she's getting about being so vulnerable about it, which is just like so upsetting that people are being so awful to her.
Yeah.
In such a heartbreaking time.
Yeah. And she shares so much of her life in general and her like whole journey. I didn't think it was that weird. I mean, weird for her to share that. And it's super, I mean, like, yeah, vulnerable of her to do that. I cannot imagine the kind of person that you have to be to negatively comment on people's stuff.
I know.
That, like, trolls are one thing, but like that is some sick shit out there.
Yeah, it really is. And I just really appreciate her being so open and honest and bringing so much awareness to a topic that, you know, needs to just be talked about a lot more, because so many women just feel alone in this. And so that's why we are really excited to have this episode to kind of share awareness for something so vulnerable and important to talk about. But before we get into it, so just a warning, you know, this might be triggering for some people that are going to be listening. So just a warning, that is what we're talking about on this episode. We do have, our guest is going to share her own story of loss. So, you know, we really hope that you listen and that this is helpful. But if you do need to skip this episode, we totally understand. And we're just letting you know up front, that's where we're going with this one.
Yeah. Yep. Good. Okay. Well, I guess let's get through our highs and lows before we bring her on. Let's see. I'll go.
Okay.
Let's see. My high. I think I'm gonna go with, oh man, I don't know. It's been real stressful over here. So I'm like, okay, let's try to think of something good. Okay. This will be my high, but it's a real complicated high. The schools announced that they are gradually going to start reopening. I don't think I talked about that last week. It's still pretty new, but they're going to gradually start going hybrid. So it's the whole school is divided into like A group, B group. So they're only going for 2 days a week, half class sizes. So they'll be in a class with like 10 to 12 kids. Kindergartners are going back first, and then they'll do first grade and second grade and like gradually add them all in. Which is exciting because my kids, just learning remotely, they get the work done, but I don't feel like they're getting much out of it. Like, especially my son, he could skip kindergarten academically, but like socially, not. He really needs the interaction and stuff. So I'm excited because like a little bit of like, okay, we're like taking steps to get back into like real life. Like, you're gonna get them out, and it is totally not about me wanting to get them out of the house, because I'm so over that. Like, they can stay as long as they want. Like, that's not an issue for me. I'm so like used to it now. I don't care about that. But for them, like, I'm excited for them to get that interaction and everything. On the flip side, I'm terrified, and my husband and I just keep going back and forth of like, if this is even a good idea. Like, why the hell are they opening schools when it doesn't seem like our rates are getting any better here? Like, we didn't expect it to happen so soon, and we thought things would be a lot better off before they decided to do that. So, it's a real roller coaster over here for
I
sure.
can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, we'll see. I'm trying to stay positive and just see how it goes. I've reached out to a lot of our boss lady mamas who have kids that have gone back to school to see kind of how that went for them, and I've really only heard positive things. So I hope that's good. Or everyone's just so excited that their kids are back at school that it's like it's great. Yeah, it's like mixed bag there, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, so cautious optimism. Ugh. But I mean that could really be my low too. But
Yeah.
my low will be my dog. He like super long story short, he has a lump under his eye, like on I guess his like third eyelid. That I took him in for. It came back as cancer. They don't know what kind exactly. But he needs to go have surgery to get some teeth cleaned and pulled anyways. So the doctor is just going to go in and take the lump out as much as he can and see how that goes. But he has to get a blood test for his heart because yeah, he has a heart murmur now. It's just been like the biggest shitstorm of vet stuff for him. And right now with COVID, like you can't at our vet at least you can't go in the office with them. You have to drop them off. And my dog is not a social guy at all. Like leaving him there was traumatic enough for him. So I feel horrible. And now his eye lump is just growing. And so I'm just like stressing out about it. And he's like our first baby. He's 12, but like
Yeah.
he's he's a terrier. Like he's still got some years left, hopefully. So that's been stressful. Yeah. He's like laying on my bed right now. Yeah. So we'll see. I take him back in like a week or so to do a blood test to check his heart. And then if that's okay, then they'll go ahead with the surgery. And hopefully that's it and they can get it all and he'll be fine. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Just like I understand that dogs get cancer and lumps, and that's not that weird. And that's kind of a thing. But on his eye, like
Yeah, that's
you
really
can't.
weird.
Yeah, I mean, we've had dogs that have had stuff that just like grow and grow and grow, and they've been fine until they're like super old or whatever. But like, it can't grow that much more. Or it's gonna like bug his eyeball. So it's completely stressing me out, and I keep like over exaggerating it in my mind that he has this like huge growth on his face, and
Yeah.
it's not big right now. But yeah, that's been my low. Just super stressful and worrying.
Anytime something like bad happens or somebody gets bad news, it's just like all you can think is like 2020, like
Right?
2020 at it again.
Yeah.
Like I'm so sorry that you're going through that. It's just
Yeah.
man, too much. It's just too much at once. Like that would be hard anytime, but just like on top of all the stress of COVID and the kids going back to school and just everything else, it's just like throw another shrimp on the Barbie.
Yeah.
On 2020. Oh
Yeah.
man, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thanks. So I'll keep you all posted. Hopefully he'll be fine. But
Yeah, he will.
Yeah.
He will be a strong guy. All right. Well, my high is I connected with this girl on Facebook. She is I didn't realize she was so young, new blogger. She's 19 and she wanted to have moms that were business owners come on and talk with her, and then she's transcribing it into a blog post, which I thought was really interesting and nothing that I've really ever done before. So I kind of put myself outside of my comfort zone and scheduled a chat with her, and it was really, really fun. She kept telling me like, oh, well, you're so much older than me. I look up to you as like a leader and all of these things. And it was just like such a flattering and inspiring conversation. And I like blacked out and was just like spitting like the best, like like uplifting, just like, I don't know. I went back and listened to it and it was just like, oh man, like where did that come from? That sounds so good. Like, yes, girl, yes, that's me talking about that. Okay, cool. It just kind of reminded me like the things that I'm doing are really important, and everything that we're saying and doing is providing value and helping people, even if we don't realize it. And there's always somebody who is looking up to you and learning from you, whether you know it or not. And it was just like a really needed, that I didn't know I needed, reminder. And I was so happy to have done that and really flattered. And it was a really good experience.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I can't wait to listen.
I know, me too. And yeah, it's actually just going to be all transcribed. We did it over Facebook. There was like no pressure because we did it over Facebook Messenger. So she would like voice record the question, and then I would voice record my answer, and back and forth, back and forth. So that was cool.
Cool.
My low is like kind of funny, but kind of not. So I don't know if I told you guys on here, like back in August, I think it was, I dropped a Costco size case of LaCroix, like basic bitch. Like I dropped a Costco size case of LaCroix on my foot, on the top of my foot. And it hurt so bad. It was like basically full. I had only taken a couple out. And I was like, it was like so painful. I crumpled to the ground, like crawled inside the house and like was screaming. It hurt so bad. I thought for sure my foot was broken. And it like didn't bruise as much as I thought it was or anything. And it was hurt to the touch, but putting shoes on and stuff was painful. But then I was able to kind of quickly get back to normal activity, and just like it just kind of hurt to the touch. And then the pain started going away, and then the pain started coming back like very intense. And like running was making it hurt. It hurts to the touch still, but it's like hurting up into my toes and like back into my ankle, and it was like on the top of my foot. So I was like, oh my God, my foot is broken. Like I know it's broken. This can't be, like I'm training for a half marathon right now. Like this cannot be a thing. What am I going to do if I can't run, if I can't exercise? I'm going to lose my damn mind. So I went into the doctor. I really didn't want to, but I was like, I have to get this thing checked out because I know it's broken. And I kept putting it off, like, oh, I'll do it after my long run. Oh, I'll do it after my hike. Like, but it just kept getting worse and worse. So I knew I couldn't keep putting it off. So went in, got the x-rays. It's not broken. So that's kind of like the high. However, the impact of the Costco sized case of LaCroix, like so embarrassing. The doctor's like, oh, LaCroix. So the impact of that dropping on my foot triggered some kind of tendinitis in this tendon that goes along the side of your foot. So I now have tendinitis because I'm a klutz, basic bitch klutz, and I have to wear like this huge obnoxious brace. And I have to take like these anti-inflammatories targeted to tendons and tendinitis. And yeah, that's what's happening. Luckily, I don't have to limit my activity, and the pain is like a 2 or a 3. So it's not unbearable. Like I could honestly be fine living with it for the rest of my life, just knowing it's not broken.
Yeah.
But it's still like, seriously, that happened?
Can we make you a sweatshirt that says basic bitch klutz? Because I like really love that.
Yes, please. I would wear that, and I would like represent it so well.
My God. Well, I'm glad it's not broken.
I know. I am too.
Yeah. Oh my
But
God.
yeah, it still sucks. I'm just like, really, man? Like that would happen to me.
Oh my gosh. Yikes.
Yeah, but all right. Well, we are going to get our guest on here. So, as we kind of mentioned at the beginning of this episode, October is National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. And so during the entire month, we take time to honor and remember those who have lost a child during pregnancy or lost a child in infancy. We wanted to bring on an old friend of mine who experienced the loss of her sweet girl years ago. It was tragic to witness the type of pain she had to endure, and I'm in awe every day of the strong and beautiful woman she is. Her story is beautiful and heartbreaking and so important for other women to hear. Please welcome to the show, Andrea Thayer. Welcome to the show, Andrea. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so honored you're joining us to talk about such a vulnerable topic, infant loss awareness.
But first,
Mhm.
before we hear your story, why don't you tell our listeners all about yourself, who you are, what you do, what makes you a boss lady? Just tell us everything.
Oh, thank you guys so much for having me. Yeah, like you said, my name's Andrea. I'm 31 years old. I have one daughter that I like to say, one earthbound daughter. She's alive with me here. I get to raise. I've been married for 5.5 years. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm native to Washington, but spent a couple years living out of state. It was a great experience. Um, as for being boss, I don't know. I'm crafty. I like to do things. I manage to keep houseplants alive. I've got a really big collection of houseplants,
That's a
and
big
I
deal.
like. Yeah, I know. I keep my child alive. I keep my dog alive and houseplants. And then I like journaling, reading. I am pretty handy with macrame. That's been my quarantine craft. So, yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, we're so excited to see you. Everybody else, you can't see her, but she's beautiful. We get to see her beautiful face while we talk to her today. And we're just, like I said, really honored to have you on. So we're going to dive into the topic. And, this can often be such a taboo topic that leaves so many women feeling alone. So before we really dig in, we'd first like to invite you to share your story with our listeners.
Yeah. When I was 21 years old, I found out I was pregnant and I was over the moon. I had really bad morning sickness, um, but it was just the happiest time in my life. I was so excited. I was young. I was not married. My boyfriend and I had been together for a couple of years and loved each other very deeply. Um, but we were, committed to the relationship and to having this baby and everything. And um, at about, oh geez, 14 or 15 weeks along, I started spotting. And so we went, well, at first I called my midwife and they said, oh, just, take the day off work and keep your feet up and rest. And so I did that. And the next day there was no spotting, but the following day I started spotting again once I started, I think I was vacuuming when I noticed it again. And so they said, okay, go in and get an ultrasound done. And I called my mom because again, I was young and I needed my mommy,
Mhm.
still do to today. But she drove down from where she lived, which was about 45 minutes to an hour away, to meet me at the hospital, and she was there with me. And they did an ultrasound and found, according to that ultrasound, that there was some organs missing in our baby. And so they suggested we go to a neonatologist. And so the next morning, we went to the neonatologist and they did an in depth, higher resolution ultrasound. They said, well, the good news is your baby has all the organs. There was just shadows they weren't able to see. And the shadowing was caused by something called hydrops. And hydrops is fluid retention around two or more important organs. And in this case, she had, well, we also found out that it was a she at that appointment. We found out that our daughter had fluid retention around her brain, her heart, and the sac around her stomach that held all of like her intestinal organs.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that that was associated with a slew of chromosomal abnormalities. And so they did a oh, what is it called? Amniocentesis. Yeah, the
Okay.
yeah, sorry. They had to try 3 different times, but after, yeah, it was really, really painful. I remember they had to like elevate my feet because I was like starting to pass out and stuff from the pain. Um, but they finally got the needle through and were able to do the withdrawal, and I had to wait like a few days not knowing what was going on. And I remember I was sitting at my mom's house watching Toy Story 3, trying to keep my mind distracted, when the doctor called to let me know that my baby girl had Down syndrome. And because it was kind of like, okay, like, I guess that's, God's plan. That's that's what I'm doing. Because I have a second cousin who has a daughter who's I think she's 6 years older than me, that has Down syndrome. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is genetic, and they said, no, it's not. And with how young you are, it has nothing to do with, the age of your eggs or anything like that. You're not predisposed. It was just a fluke. And so, but I didn't know that babies passed away from Down syndrome because, like I said, I had a cousin who was older than me that had it. So I was like, okay, well, then this is it. And then they said, and due to the swelling, she has about a 2% chance of survival. And they had suggested termination for the pregnancy. And I said, no, it's between, again, my higher power and my daughter. If she's going to make it, she's going to make it. If she's not, then it's my job to love her every second that I get to have her. So that started a whole slew of multiple times a week going in and getting ultrasounds and listening with the fetal Doppler for her heartbeat and stuff like that. And every single time it was good, she was moving. I started to get to feel her kicking and all of these wonderful, wonderful experiences that, I remember the first kick just vividly. And just these beautiful experiences, even though my morning sickness completely persisted and I knew that she was sick or struggling, that it was just everything I'd ever wanted and more. And so I went in for another routine ultrasound, and I remember the tech kind of moving the little handheld thing around more and more, and she's looking, and I'm like kind of waiting for that sound, and and my mom was sitting with me, and she just said, she said, "I'm sorry, I can't find a heartbeat," and that was like all she said. And then she got up and walked out. And I remember turning to my mom and saying, "I felt her kick this morning, Mom. Like, she's fine. The doctor will come in and he'll find it. I felt her kick really strong this morning."
Yeah.
And so the doctor came in and he was looking through those, the pictures she had scanned, and he's trying to find a heartbeat. And he said, "I'm sorry, she's gone." And I remember when they had been prepping me to for this reality, they had said she has a 2% chance of survival. Like, she's, it's a when, not if. And they had said, then after she passes away, you'll have about a week until your body will naturally go into labor because the hormones drop off and you're naturally going to go in. And I remember at that time going, "You expect me to carry her for a week after she has passed away? Like, no, get her out of me." But this weird thing happened when they told me that she had passed away, where it was like, "Over my dead body are you taking her from me? Like, she's mine. She's in me. This is my baby girl. You can't." And so for a week and a half, anytime I would have any cramping or anything like that, I'd go and take a bath and try to relax and soothe out the cramping and everything. And so finally my doctor called me one day and said, "You haven't gone into labor naturally. I understand you hurt and you don't want to let her go, but you're ruining your chances for future babies by opening yourself up for infection." So I had to go in and get induced, and I wanted to do all natural because I wanted to feel it and process it and not have it just all of a sudden be she was gone. But my body wouldn't dilate, so I ended up having to have an epidural, and then my body contracted, and I delivered her. And the night I delivered her, I didn't want to hold her. I didn't want to see her. I don't know. I didn't want to. I couldn't bring myself to it. So then the next morning, the nurse came in and said, "Hey, kind of a last chance thing. Like, we've got to process her. And so I held her, and she was tiny, because what ended up happening was there was her heart was undersized due to the chromosomal abnormalities. So her body slowed down to allow her heart kind of chance to keep up, but there was just a tipping point where her heart couldn't sustain her body, and so it just, and so she was only like 7.5 inches and 13 ounces. Like, she was just this tiny thing, and she had passed away. I remember just praying, please let her get to 20 weeks. Just let her get to 20 weeks, because in this, I don't know if it's standard, but in Washington State, that's when it's considered a stillborn instead of a miscarriage. And in my mind,
Oh, wow.
that felt more like she existed, you know, like, and I know that's not true. Like, I know I have, friends that have miscarried at 6 weeks, and their grief is the same. It's the loss of a potential child. I know people that have delivered at full term, and there's been, there's just a life loss is a life loss. There isn't. But in my 21-year-old mind,
right,
it was validating. And so she made it to 20 weeks and 5 days.
Oh, wow.
Then, so she had just made it to where it was considered a stillborn. And then I carried her till 22 weeks and 5 days. So straight 2 weeks. But there was a lot of things through that were great gifts that a lot of people don't get. Like, I got answers. I knew what happened. I know why all that took place. I was able to have her cremated, and I have her urn. It caused a lot of growth and young maturing and perspective and all sorts of things.
Yeah, what a quick way to grow up.
Yeah, but
sure.
I mean, like, even at 31, 20 years, 10 years later, it still gives me anxiety. Like, right now, I'm sitting there, like, like, it still makes my stomach hurt.
Yeah,
it's a lot, just even a decade later. But so yeah, that's the story of Isla Noel.
Thank you for sharing it with everyone. We really appreciate it, and I know it's a lot, so thank you. Thank you. So if you could describe your life now in one word, what would you choose and why?
I wrote notes for this podcast, and I wrote progressing, because I'm nowhere near the person I was a decade ago, but really, I would say thriving, because it's not just I've grown so much more than I thought. If I were to sit next to my 21-year-old self, where I was at, and look where I am now, I would have never thought that. I would have never thought that I could have come out of it or made it through. Because honestly, I lost her like 10 years ago. This month was when we found out that she had issues. It was the day after a Halloween party. And then I carried her, and I delivered her on December 13th. So that's literally a decade. Right now is the time where, like, right about this time was when I first felt her kick. And, this time of year is always marked by the appointments and the things that happened then.
I can't believe that was 10 years ago. Oh my goodness.
I know. Like, I mean, I remember calling you.
I remember too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to know that I get to be a mom, that I get to have my 2.5-year-old now, and that God gave me a daughter when I truly thought that Isla was my only chance to have a daughter. When we had the gender reveal for my living daughter, my mom was taking a video when they announced that it was my sister and I, we're cutting the cake, and my husband and I, my sisters made the cake, and my husband and I are sitting there cutting it. And when I saw that it was pink inside, my mom's taking a video, and I just went blank. And then started smiling and laughing, and Chris and I kissed, and we're celebrating and stuff. And when my mom stopped taking the video, I went into the kitchen and I just sobbed because I didn't think I was going to get that chance. Like, I truly thought that Isla was my daughter and my one and only daughter. So it kind of cemented my belief in a grander design, somebody looking out for my healing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, daughters are the most amazing gift. I mean, that's beautiful. I don't have a son, but
I know. There's something different.
You too.
So
there's just something special about it.
Yeah. So while we're kind of looking back on this time, and just for anybody who might be going through something like this right now in the present, can you think of a way that you wish your friends and family would have supported you in those first couple of years post loss?
I was really, really blessed with my friends and family and my support. There was times where they were like over supportive, and I was like ignoring phone calls. I had my grandma, I remember specifically sitting on the couch and her calling me, and me just going, I don't have it in me to talk. I think that it would be really nice to have somebody be a news chain. Like if I could just tell my mom what's happening, and then she could do for me, so that I'm not repeating it over and over again. That was exhausting and made me feel really stuck in that second. I think sometimes I need to be surrounded. Sometimes I needed to be alone. And to have asked any more from the people around me would really have been kind of expecting them to read my mind, because I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know what I wanted. I just kept existing. Like it was.
Yeah, how could you possibly know? I mean,
right,
your
exactly.
world was shattered.
Right, and so I think that it was more. It wasn't that I needed anything from anybody. Everybody was pretty good about validating, like, yeah, that of course you hurt. Of course you're broken. Like nobody was like, oh, it wasn't full term, or like nobody was
Right.
like I did have one family member who, she's very, very old, and so really old timey. She had said that, well, it's okay that she went to be with the Lord, because she would have lived in an asylum had she been born anyways, because back when she was a child, Down syndrome wasn't something that was raised in the home. And I just remember, like, I wasn't able to detach from it. I wasn't able to go, that's her reality and what she was brought up with. I took it very personally and was very angry and didn't talk to that person for a very long time, until I realized that had nothing to do with me, had nothing to do with the current situation. It wasn't malicious. It was just behind in times, and maybe a little, it was ignorant and not thoughtful. Like, not very compassionate.
Right.
So.
Oh my gosh. Now, what is one question that you wish people would ask you, and one that you wish they wouldn't?
I'm not a good person to ask on the wouldn't ask, because I'm an open book. I can imagine that a lot of people that have gone through it probably don't want to talk about what it was like coming home without a baby. That would probably, but for me, again, I talk pretty openly about anything. For questions that I wish people would ask, even today, I wish that people would bring her up, that, like, I get this, like, I get self-conscious every anniversary on something where when I want to post on social media, I get self-conscious, like, am I still dragging this out? Are people like, holy crap, she was only 20 weeks pregnant? Like, am I making it more than it was by still holding on to it now that I have a healthy, beautiful toddler? Like, there's all that. But I think I would like for people to just say, what do you think it would be like if you had a 9.5-year-old daughter right now? Or, because that's what she'd be. She'd be 9.5, like that's nuts. But I like living in that what if hypotheticals. I like daydreaming and, and so for people like cemented in reality, unlike my Pisces self, like that might be annoying. But for me, I like talking about her. I like that she existed. I like who I am today because of her existence. So I think just continuing to not feel like I'm the only person remembering her. And I know I'm not. Like, I have friends that'll still can't talk. That'll say, I still have her hand and footprints. I carry it in my wallet, or because we had a bunch at her remembrance that we passed out to people, and like I have like 4 different people that over the years have been like, I still have that in my rearview mirror of my car, or and so like that, just keeping her alive with me, I think is what I would like.
Yeah, I think that's really important to know, because I think, when somebody in your life suffers a loss, a lot of people feel like they want to tiptoe around that because they don't want to upset the person who did suffer that loss. And everybody grieves in different ways. So, you feel this way, but somebody else might, never want to talk about their loss. And so
Right.
I think it's important that you continue letting people know, like, hey, this is okay. We can talk about her. It makes me feel good when we talk about her. So, people can support you in that way and be there in that way without feeling like they're doing the wrong thing. I mean, with grief, it's just, and loss, there's no wrong or right thing to do. And it's just so uncharted territory for so many people. I think it's just important to let people know. And I love that you said that. I think that's huge.
Yeah, it's nice when, like, I mean, there'll be times where you and I haven't talked in eons, and you'll still send me on anniversaries and things. And I might not always be in the place to receive it, but it always feels good. Like, for me, it always, like, and I think with the whole people not wanting to talk about it, for me, it was, I mean, it hurts, obviously.
Of course.
But for me, I've always been a communicator. And so I think you can kind of, I've had friends who have had horrible losses of all sorts. I had a friend who lost her husband, and she was a pretty quiet, shut-in kind of person anyways. And so I just kind of took her lead, and like let them, if she wanted to talk about him, then man, you dive in and you get immersed in that conversation with them. And if they don't, then just sit silently and watch a movie or, whatever. It's the person, just because they've gone through a loss, it changes them, but they're not a different human. So if you're a close friend to them, you know how they operate. You know when, stuff hits the fan, how they're going to go. So just either meet them where they're at in any way that you can, I think, so that they don't feel alone. Because I felt, even with all the support I had, I was 21 years old. I had like, gosh, how many friends? I think I had like 7 friends who were pregnant at that time.
Jeez.
There was just a slew of us. And all of them, I felt completely alone. I mean, my own sister, we were 3 weeks apart in our pregnancies. She said, I didn't know how to be around you. I felt so guilty being around you, having my pregnancy. And that it kind of diseases the family, diseased all of us in my family. My sister had a hard time being happy about her pregnancy and celebrating her pregnancy, which I had no idea it was doing that to her. I was like, oh my God, this is my niece, like even oh, I lost my daughter. I was there in the delivery room when my niece was born, and I think that there's just it trickles out in such weird ways, and different people handle it differently. And I think it's just one of those things where you just gotta communicate,
Mhm.
and the person that's in the grief doesn't know how to do that. I can tell you right now that it has to be somebody on the outside, because the person sitting there in the pain
Mhm.
doesn't even know how to move their tongue, like it just
Yeah.
everything hurts too bad. So
Yeah, and I think it's okay on the outside to ask somebody, is this okay? Is this okay to talk about what,
right,
not even what do you want me to do, because that might be too broad of a question. Be
it was
specific.
burdensome when somebody would say, how can I help? I'd just be like, I don't even know how to help me. How do you expect me to tell somebody
Mhm.
else what to do? Like it was just such a weight.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So yeah, just being transparent with them. Like, and there's this thing that I've learned where you don't say, you know, are you okay? Because then that makes them realize that they're not.
Mm.
But in like psychology, you go, what are you thinking about? And so it's not saying like, oh, are you okay? It's
Yeah.
what are you thinking about? And that just lets them go, and being okay if they say nothing, because they
Right.
don't always share. I use that same analogy or that same trick with my husband. Like
Mm.
just, they're temperamental, so you just have
Yeah.
to okay. But dealing with people in grief is one of the trickiest, most unnatural things that the human comes across. Like you just don't know how to be there for somebody when they are mourning the loss of something.
Which
Like,
is
because
so crazy because every single one of us goes through some sort of loss in life. You think that
right,
somewhere along our evolution that would become like a natural skill that we have.
right. I think that the only evolutionary connection to that would be that the community would
Mhm.
be that there's that societal group. There, like my mom has always referred to me and my sister and my aunts and stuff, or a tribe, and
Mm.
it's true. Like that's my group, and they we rally together whenever something is struggling or whenever one of us is struggling. So
Yeah. So, how would you say you've integrated your loss into your everyday life now?
um I one I try to keep I try to honor my first daughter. I just try to keep her memory alive. Um, but I get to appreciate being a mom to my daughter Lucy. And with with having experienced infant loss, I have been able to be there for people that didn't know that other people experienced it. When I lost Isla, I didn't know that that was even something that was possible. At that age, somebody gets pregnant, 9 months later they have a baby.
Right.
Mhm.
Maybe they don't find out they're pregnant until they're 4 months along, and 5 months later they have a pregnant, but they always have a pregnancy leads to babies. You
Right.
know, um, so so a lot of pregnancy loss came out of the woodwork while I was going through that, and I wish that I would have known that existed
Mhm.
before, so I wasn't so shell shocked.
Mhm.
Um, so with my everyday life, I try to be pretty transparent in that that's something that I've gone through, so that I've had people reach out to me saying, "Hey, I'm having scares in my pregnancy, and I know that you had scares in yours." And I'll pray with them. I'll talk through them with my experience. I'll, suggest certain tests that they can run because I went through them. And I know all the stats. I know the statistics of things.
Mhm.
So I try to just be available to others so that they don't feel like they're alone. I have done workshops at a church several years ago that it was like a trying to conceive and infant loss group. It was a weird mesh because I was like people with all these hopes of future pregnancies, and then all these people
Yeah.
like, oh, you know.
Oh,
But,
it was not combined.
Like,
it wasn't
it
for
was
like.
no, no, it was a combined group. It was the
Oh,
weirdest
yeah.
thing.
Huh.
And like I was like, this is a little dismal, and like, but it gave those people that were trying to conceive, like, it's like that whole idea of like, don't test until you're a week late. Don't do the 5 days before your pregnancy, your period's supposed to show up test, because like 50% of pregnancies go away by your first period. You know, like they just
Wow.
reabsorb, or they didn't implant properly. So there's, you know, things like that that um so just kind of guiding people into like, don't set yourself up for mental failure, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It was
makes sense.
weird. Yeah. But just trying, I don't know, I integrate, I it's a huge part of me. It was the biggest, loudest, boldest written chapter in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it redefined the rest of the book, and there's no ignoring it. And I wouldn't want to, but everything I do, everything, even when I get mad at Lucy, she's 2.5, and just definitely 2.5, and
Yeah.
definitely my child. So it tries me daily, but I think I'm able to take just a half a second longer breath before I react,
Mhm.
because of the appreciation of her existence. I know every decent mom loves their child and tries to be their best for their child and everything like that, but I truly do. And I'm not saying I truly think I'm a better mom. I'm just saying I'm better than I would have been. It's
Mm-hmm.
not in comparison to any other mom. It's compared to who I would have been had Isla not existed. I'm a better mom to Lucy, for sure.
Oh, goosebumps.
I know. Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you is how has your view on motherhood changed since having Lucy?
Oh, it's just the greatest gift on earth. Like truly, yeah, I can't even get over it. I will sit and stare at her monitor and just watch her, and just in awe of her existence. Um, I have a greater appreciation for her existence,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a really, really horrible, mentally exhausting pregnancy with her, not because of anything other than my loss of Isla.
Mm-hmm.
And I had pelvic pain and some morning sickness, and you know, like things like that. But
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with postpartum, or I was diagnosed with PTSD through my pregnancy.
How could you
Um,
not be? I mean, that'd be
I
terrible.
was
Yeah.
I was an anxious, complete, depressed wreck, and it didn't help that I've suffered and battled anxiety and depression since I was a teenager, and
Mhm.
so I was terrified of having any chemicals in my body when I got pregnant with Lucy. So I got off my antidepressants, and that started a pregnancy where it triggered every single fear I had bottled up for 7.5 years.
Yeah.
You know, and my midwife finally in my third trimester said, "Look, sweetheart, I really applaud your efforts, but for your mental health, the safety of your future, for your daughter that's in you, and for any chance of success, you need to get back on an antidepressant." And it made me feel like and I told her, that makes me feel like I'm failing. She goes, "That's because you're depressed." So, okay.
Funny how that works.
So I got, I mean, seriously, my midwife was a godsend. She was just the greatest gift to my pregnancy. I could call her after hours and just sit and talk with her, and she was like just like a sponsor through pregnancy. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, so my pregnancy was horrible, and when I delivered, I had a different midwife. When they put Lucy on my stomach, like I couldn't even look at her. I had my eyes closed. I'm so they're just like tears like spraying out of my eyes that are squeezed shut. And then I said, "Is she okay? Does she have all of her fingers and her toes? You know, like is she okay?"
Yeah.
And, I can hear her crying, and, my mom's like, oh, she's beautiful. And my husband came and he got real close to my ear and he said, sweetheart, she's absolutely perfect. She's okay. Look at her. And I looked at her, and like my world just shifted. Like it was just everything. And so the midwife that delivered her wasn't my midwife through the process because she was off shift and stuff. So my midwife, after she got me all stitched up and everything, went out and read my file because she could tell there was something different about my delivery with her. And she came back in and she goes, I knew it. I said, what? I saw all that healing that happened the second you looked at her. Your heart is full again and it has been broken. And I didn't even know that. Like I didn't even think about the amount of healing that would take place having my daughter placed on my chest. And I had told my mom a couple of weeks into motherhood, I am crippled by postpartum anxiety. Like I had the worst postpartum anxiety. I had like a little monitor on her, monitoring that she's breathing 24/7. Like my family members were making fun of me, like to let her sleep. Like, no, she has to, like, I didn't sleep unless Chris was staring at her. Like it was just, I had to have windows open because I had to have fresh air coming through because something, like it was weird.
I mean, there's already normal, like, quote, normal postpartum anxiety, but then put on top of that the loss. Oh my goodness,
like,
I can't even imagine.
Terrified kids. And but there was still just this absolute glee and giddiness. Like I would be about to just start sobbing from hormones and fear, but I'd be like smiling at her. Like, my mom said, I said, I didn't even realize that I was still broken after living through 7.5 years of not having Isla. I just had kind of gotten used to that hole. I had gotten used to the fact that in my mind, my body was broken, that it had failed me. And so then to have Lucy and to have her be just brilliantly perfect, I told my mom, and she said, there's some scripture, and I'm going to misquote it because I'm not good at reading the Bible, but it's something about like a longing. No, hold on. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. A longing fulfilled is the tree of life. And it was just the hope deferred that, like I had wanted to be a mom since I was like 4 and had my first dolly. Like I always knew I wanted to be a mom. I was always the nurturing one in my friends. I was, like, and and so then when I was so close to being a mom and I, lost that opportunity, it was just heart sickness. It was just this existence of waiting for that opportunity. And then like that longing fulfilled is the tree of life. And like that, it was just, my life truly took off and blossomed the second I was able to mend that brokenness in me. And I wish that I could have done that on my own independently and that it didn't hinge on the birth of my daughter, but for me, that's what it took.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you've discovered many gifts along the way from your suffering. And, if you could share a few of those, that kind of touches a little bit, I think just the appreciation for your daughter and, what else would you say would be a gift from that suffering?
So definitely appreciation, but perspective. The greatest gift I was given is perspective. I keep talking about my mom because she was the one that was really, really there for me through all of it. But she had told me, Andrea, if money can fix it, it's not a problem. And as I'm in the loss of, in the waiting to lose my first child, as I, know that it's imminent.
Yeah.
And I said, Mom, I can't fix this. I can pray, I can have hope, I can have all of these things, and it's not gonna, like she's already formed. You can't pray for all of a sudden her chromosomes to be different,
Right.
like, and she said that if money can fix it, it's not a problem. And it's true that at 21 years old, that was the first time in my life that I ever actually had a real problem.
Mm.
And since then, I mean, and I'm not saying I lived a blessed life before that. Like, I had issues, I had things that happened,
Mm-hmm.
but that was the first time that money couldn't fix it. It wasn't temporary. It wasn't just a bad day. And so I've had bad days since then. I've had stresses. I've had heartache. I've had other losses since then.
Mhm.
But to know, it's kind of like my radar. Like, it does it hurt as bad as losing a child? Nope. Okay, then I'm fine. Like, it's a cold way of looking at it, but like,
Yeah.
it really does. It's like it pales in comparison. So like, pull yourself up by your straps and carry on. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
this is discomfort, not pain. It's like after giving birth. You can give birth, you can get a tattoo. Like, it's just that same sort of thing, just emotional. So perspective is definitely the greatest thing, and a decade later, able to still really see that. And I know that I'll be, I'm gifted the age of, or to be able to age to 80, I'll still hold that as a gauge.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How would you say your loss has changed you?
For a long time, I was just really broken and bitter, and I didn't like. I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky person, even though I've battled anxiety and depression. I'm still genuinely a pretty optimistic person, and in that, I couldn't be. I couldn't have hope. I couldn't have anything. And so I think through getting through that to being able to have hope again and be able to heal and grow, it made me stronger. It made me more empathetic to other people struggling, because it was the first time that I had faced something that I learned other people went through. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I've got crappy parents, or oh, my boyfriend, I don't know, at 21, my boyfriend gamed too much, like, but it made me go, oh my gosh, there's actual suffering in the world. That sucks. Like, and it was humbling, because like that was another thing that it made me a more humble human being, to go, all right, it was science. My body didn't split eggs, DNA properly. Like, it wasn't my fault. It was not my fault that my body did that. I am not my body. My body is the shell that carries me. But my shell isn't perfect. And
That's hard.
Yeah. Well, and it's done that even, postpartum, like with, like allowing my shell to be saggier and softer and more stretched out than it had been before pregnancy, like just allowing your human body to be human and flawed. I think that was something that was not shown to me. My mom was always like a size 2. She was a Mary Kay consultant. She was always, her hair never had any grays. She was always just pretty and perfect. And then my older sister is a complete perfectionist as well. There's just both just women, just perfectly the definition of women. And so then here I come and I'm like, going, oh great, I can't even do pregnancy right. It was kind of my mindset. And then went, you know what? Have a little grace. Give yourself some grace. Allow yourself the permission to be human and be flawed. And even if it hurts you, like, who would think that your own body could like betray you like that? Like, so it's a lot to get through. But it, again, it's made me stronger. It's made me, I think, nicer. For a long time, it made me colder and meaner and harder and all of those things. But to be a decade past, I'm nicer. I'm warmer. I'm softer.
That's good. What about relationships? How has it changed your relationships? Has it affected your marriage?
Yes, it has affected my marriage. Like I had said, it was an ex that I had lost Isla with. And my husband and I, like, I knew when he and I started dating at 23, I was like, I'm going to be a mom. If you don't want to be a dad, then toodles, because that's, like, then we're not meant. And he was like, no, that's something I want. I was like, okay. And so then we, a year and a half, 2 years later, we get married. And like 6 months later, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to start trying to get pregnant. Like this, and he's like, well, hold on, we're 25. Like, I'm not quite right there yet. And I'm like, no, I've known since like I was there. I was, so close just like 5 years ago. Like, I'm ready now. I've been waiting for 5 years. And so there was fights. There was, a lot of me trying to like will him to, it's like in Bruce Almighty when he's like trying to will Jennifer Aniston to loving him. He's just like, ah, and, like, I want to have a baby right now. Like, it was that same like ridiculousness. I know that with just outside relationships, like, that I've had people afraid to tell me they were pregnant. I had, and like, yeah, and then people will tiptoe around things with me, and I'm like, man, I'm not a broken, fragile, like, little china cup, like, I'm more like stoneware. But yeah, I think that my husband is the relationship that like, with my marriage, is the relationship it affected the most. And like, he knew me before. We've known each other since we were 15. And truly, I think one of the things that made me so drawn to him was that he didn't treat me like 21-year-old Andrea. He treated me like that, he didn't treat me like I was the broken, just lost Isla Andrea when we came together. He treated me like the girl he's known since he was 15. And it was really nice to not be treated like I was broken.
Yeah.
Side note, I can hear that Chris has taken Lucy out the crib. I can hear them in the living room, and I don't know why he allowed her to get
up. I hate that. What are they doing?
Oh, yeah.
You can edit that
out. So, what is your biggest trigger, and what helps you cope when it hits?
Pregnancy was my biggest trigger, and anniversaries. Like, we're coming up on anniversaries for several years. Mother's Day was a horrible trigger because I was like, people would be like, "Happy Mother's Day, Andrea," and I'm like, I'm not a mother. Like, shut up, stop trying to cater to me. Like, I don't know what diaper changes and sleepless nights and breastfeeding is like. Like, I'm not a mother. Like, that was my thing. Like, it was, people would say, like, oh, you're a mom, you've loved like a mother, and I was like, yeah, but I haven't gotten to experience it. Like, I know I want to be a mother really, really badly, but I wasn't a mother. And so Mother's Day was a really big one. But pregnancy was really, really, really hard. And yeah, it's just anniversaries. Like, I just kind of go into this little, like the first anniversary after I lost her, or no, the first anniversary of her delivery after Lucy was born. I sat on the phone with my sister and cried for like 2 hours. And like, when we first got on the phone, she's like, "Do you want me to come over?" Because she lives like 10 minutes away. She's like, "Do you want me to come over?" I was like, "No, I just need to cry at you for a minute." And like 2 hours later, she was like, "I could have been there holding you this whole time." I was like, "I'm fine." But it was just this weird, like, it made me feel really crappy. Like, I'm sitting here with this beautiful, healthy child, and I'm mourning the loss of one from years ago. Like, it just made me feel like, just be appreciative of what you've got, you selfish jerk. Like, there's just this, and and again, that's where you learn to like give yourself some grace, But like, it was just, I wasn't expecting to be sad ever after Lucy was born. Was a real, ignorant idea. It's like, just didn't know any better. But really, it kind of almost amplified it, like, because I had been kind of numb to it for a couple of years. That was my existence. And then Lucy was here, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, the idea of 2 kids, or I'm missing out on, like, she has an older sister, and like, how much do you tell Lucy? And I am an open book. I do want her to know the existence of her older sister, even, and then that opens up a whole other can of worms of like, with a different daddy, like, oh wow, like, there's just so many layers to it. But like, I would hate, God forbid she goes through something like that, I would hate for her to feel like she doesn't have anybody around her who understands, and to then be like, oh, by the way, I've gone through that. And she'll be like, well, why didn't you tell me sooner? Yeah. So it's just, there's, that kind of trigger. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, that like leads us right into the next question of just, what do you want the world to know about pregnancy loss and life after loss?
It happens, like, it truly, I didn't know it was a thing. Like, I mean, I was homeschooled the year we did sex ed, so maybe I just, like, I don't know if that's something that they teach about in school.
I don't think so. I
don't think they, sex leads to pregnancy. Okay, but what can pregnancy lead to? Like, there's so many more than just, you're told you're either going to have a baby, or you're going to put it up for adoption, or you're going to abort it. Those are your 3 options. No, it could also be taken from you for a myriad of reasons, like, there's so much more to it than, like, that it happens. I didn't know it was a thing, and that felt so isolating. So I feel like, and I don't, because it is so taboo, people, like, I remember when I would meet people who were pregnant, or like, as a hairstylist, I'd have customers who were pregnant, and they'd say, oh, do you have kids? And I would just clam up. I did, and it wasn't because it hurt so bad I didn't know how to tell them, but I didn't want to like rain on their parade, because it's such a taboo, like, I'd be like, I just found myself saying no, because I don't want to, like, I know the joy of pregnancy, and I don't want to take that joy from people, by filling them with fear of losing a pregnancy. So like, I don't know at what point you educate somebody on that. Like,
I don't think people know until, like, honestly, don't really know until they either have experienced it, or even when they're pregnant already, and then start thinking about the what ifs, and then they start hearing these stories. It doesn't seem like it's before at all.
Right. Like, there's no way to, like, graciously, kindly, gently, softly say, hey, just so you know, when you get pregnant, if you choose to have children in the future, if you get pregnant, there is a chance that it could pass away at any point. Like, how do you say that?
Yeah.
Like, it's not, when you have your first, I think, like, your first OB appointment, they'll say, like, oh, like, do this, this, and this, because 1/3 of miscarriages happen in the first trimester. Like, you are, I think you're kind of told that can happen, but it's not. And like, by living life, you can see, like, oh, there's people with Down syndrome out there. There's people with handicaps and malformations and things, like, so, but I feel like there's almost like just like a mental block that doesn't allow you to, like, process that could be the baby inside of you,
Right.
So I don't, like, I want people to know it happens without just raining on them. Like,
Well, I think
such a subject.
It is important because, and I remember being pregnant even going through like, okay, what kind of genetic testing do you want to do? Like while you're pregnant? And even then when they're like giving you all these statistics and stuff, you're still like, or at least I was like imagining, okay, these are the things that could go wrong, like wrong or different,
Right.
you know. But I don't think I ever would have considered not having a baby at the end of that. Like you wouldn't, I wouldn't have thought that some of those things could end up being like fatal. That's not, and I feel like they don't do a good job of letting you know that either.
Right. No, and I feel like you could, you go, okay, so my child could have a hole in their heart. Okay, well, there's neonatal surgeries. Like that's, you
Right.
think you just have your faith in medical science and, that they'll be able to just, they fix that. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes they can't, like I know of women who have lost their babies, had SIDS or born with defects and born with, like, I have a friend who the baby aspirated the meconium and had pneumonia, and that by the grace of God, the baby was perfectly fine after a couple of weeks in NICU. But that's not the case for everybody, like that's just where the infant loss is, 1 in 4 is their like slogan is, 1 in 4 experience it. That's 25% of the women. That's, that's an eighth of the population experiences it. And yet we all still feel alone, like we still are all taken, by shock with it. Like none of us are like, oh, well, we knew that this was a possibility. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. So,
Another part of that I wanted to bring up, it's also interesting because I know a lot of women wait to disclose that they're pregnant to people because of that risk of miscarriage. And I was like, well, if that happens, is that just, you're like, you're not going to tell anyone? And then everyone's just suffering in silence, like with alone? Like that, it'd be nice to break out of that mold and not make that such a taboo hush hush thing.
That's one of, like I remember my mom being mad that when I was like 6.5 weeks pregnant when I announced to everybody that Isla existed. Like the second I found out I like confirmed pregnant from the doctor, I like announced it. And my mom, apparently, she never voiced it to me, but apparently she had been like annoyed that I alerted everybody that early because I was raised very Christian. I was an unwed young mother, and but then years later she was talking to me about it, and she said, I remember being like, you should wait until you're 13 weeks. And then she's like, but then Andrea, at 15 weeks, you found out that there was something wrong, like, the what matter or what difference would it have made, and I am so glad that people got to know she existed for as long as I knew she got to exist, and I understand, for a private, it's a personal choice. If for a more private person, sure. If you don't want people checking in on you and seeing how you are, then fine, to go through it by yourself, But like for me, I choose, for me personally, I choose to honor that. And, if my husband and I tried to have another child, I was very open about the fact that we tried for 2 years to be able to have Lucy. And, and then my mom was like, by people knowing they were trying to get pregnant, she was like, pretty much you're just announcing that you're having sex. So I was like, well, we're married. So.
It's so awkward. But like, oh, I know what you were doing.
Right. Oh, attaboy, but it was that, if something came up, I wanted my tribe, because there were times where I was like a week late and I'd get, like, oh, maybe it's the time. And then nothing would happen. And I'd be like, and now I'm disappointed and let down. Thank God I'm not alone in it, like that's me personally. I don't know.
So if there was one thing that you could tell someone suffering from the loss of a child, what would it be?
That I know it hurts and they're not alone, and that time is the greatest gift you can give yourself. Um, that my mantra to myself was just keep my heart beating and my lungs receiving oxygen.
Mm.
Just keep myself alive. If that means that I stay in bed for 3 days and don't eat and don't, whatever, then that's what I do. I just knew I had to get time to pass. And, like I mentioned a friend who had lost her husband. I I told her the same thing. I said, this is the shittiest chapter of your life. I can't even imagine I'm losing my spouse. After losing the pregnancy, I still couldn't imagine losing my spouse. And the only thing you can do in loss is just get time to pass, because that pain doesn't go away. You get used to it. You get to a point where it kind of loses its raw edges and finds more of a comfortable, it melts into you more comfortably and just sits with you.
Mm.
And you have to allow yourself that amount of time. And it's different for everybody, but that it's okay to get angry, it's okay to have any emotion. You're allowed. I mean, there was days where I felt relief. Again, I was 21. The idea of raising a child with Down syndrome, like, there was not a single part of me that was like, oh, good. But there was days where I was like, that would have been a lot. That would have, that would have been really hard. Like, I didn't even have health insurance. How on earth am I was on state insurance through that. Like, how, and so just, I think for people that are going through it, give yourself grace, give yourself time, and allow yourself to feel the emotions. Don't try and numb it. I know that there's so much out there that you can do to numb yourself. And like, my sister had bought me a bottle of wine after I lost Isla. It's kind of, like, you buy people wine when they've given birth, or champagne, or something, and like, you haven't been able to drink in 9 months. And she'd kind of done it. It was just kind of like a little, hey, trying to be cute, I guess. And it sat on my counter for a month, and finally I gave it to a neighbor, because I knew if I drank that bottle of wine, I was going to keep drinking and keep drinking and keep drinking, because I knew if I tasted relief, it was going to consume me. And so I just didn't drink. I couldn't drink, because I knew I needed to feel the pain. I needed to process it. It wasn't masochistic or anything like that. It was just allowing myself to be raw. And I think that was one of the greatest gifts I gave myself. And so that's something, to be present in the emotions. And so that's something that I have talked to people about. And I know that a lot of people go, that's stupid. I'm going to drink my face off tonight. Like, I totally get that. Like, yeah, if I knew that I could drink my face off tonight and then not drink my face off for the rest of the night, then, but I didn't trust myself. So just knowing that it hurts and allowing it to hurt as long as it needs to, and giving yourself permission to feel, I think, is really important for people that are in that loss.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. I mean, we're in a society that just everything is, I can do this, I can get through this. I don't have time to, feel, or I'm, not going to be weak. I'm going to push through this. And it's just not natural to let ourselves have that and to give ourselves that permission. I think that's so important. And it's probably one of the hardest things that we can do as humans is to really just sit back and be in pain.
I think it's against our survival instinct. I think that we have to be strong, and because the weak don't last. But we are not cavemen anymore. If majority of people sitting in their homes, not everybody, sadly, but the majority of people sitting in their homes are safe. You're allowed to let your guard down. You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to be weak.
Mm-hmm.
And when your body will let you know. You can't not cry.
Yeah. And if you don't, let yourself feel that pain and that grief at that time, it's going to come up throughout your life in all different kinds of ways. You're going to have to face it eventually.
Definitely. It'll manifest itself much uglier later. It's just like a little monster growing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I really, really, really appreciate you talking with us and our listeners about this. I hope that anybody who is going through this kind of loss right now can take some of what Andrea has to offer and use it to help you get through this. We really, really appreciate it. And so we're going to wrap up on the topic.
Yeah.
But before we let you go, we do want to kind of lighten the mood a little bit.
For sure.
And check in with you about these little moments that we have in our lives that can be oh so messy. And so in this segment, we ask our guests to share their hot mess moments. So what do you got?
Oh, let's see. Just a few weeks ago, my 2.5-year-old, we have a very carpeted house, and I got a little cute potty for her to be able to sit on, and she's sitting on it. And I got one of those like waterproof mats under it off Amazon so that she can, if she slides off the toilet and so that she won't pee all over the carpet. And I had been like forcing fluids in her while she's sitting on the toilet, trying to like, come on, pee on the toilet. Come on, you'll get a Barbie if you pee on the toilet. Just do it. And she drank all her juice, and she says, Mommy, more juice. Okay. And so I walk 20 feet away from her into the kitchen to go get her more juice. And as I am filling up her cup, I hear her do this panicked little like squeak thing. And I turn around to my little naked gem of a human running and peeing all the way that 20 feet to me.
Oh,
apparently, the idea of peeing on a toilet scared her. So when she started to hear it, like reverberating off her little toilet seat, she panicked, jumped off, and comes sprinting to me while not having the bladder control to like stop peeing. So she just all the way across the entire room. And it was like one of those moments where I really thought that I had figured it out. Like, oh, she's got the waterproof mat, she's got her toilet, she's got her favorite cartoon, she's got a bowl of M&Ms next to her. Like, she's not gonna get up for anything. Yeah. Like, I really was like patting myself on the back, and that was very humbling. I spent an hour and a half with my Resolve bottle just spraying down a straight line, scrubbing. It was like 8 o'clock at night, so I couldn't like go and like just call my sister and be like, hey, do you have a carpet cleaner or something? It was rough. And
I bet that's an image you'll never get out of your head though. Like, I have that image in my head now, just a little cute naked baby running across the room.
Cute. It really, really was cute. She's just like this little, like, she's not like, she's all skinny now because like she was a fat little baby, but now as a toddler running around, she's so skinny and she's got her little butt and she's just like panicked, all naked. She's like, I can't wait to tell her future boyfriends.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me. I hope that everything I said, I've been kind of meditating on this, trying to make sure that what I say through this whole thing has, that it's able to hit people's hearts properly, that it lands well. I don't want to say anything that have offended anybody. Everything I said was with the best of intentions and strictly my experience. I know that everybody experiences this completely differently. But if anybody would like to reach out to me, I have my experience that I can share, my hope. But so you can reach out to me on Facebook. Just find me at Andrea Thayer, Thayer.
Perfect. We'll tag you too. So
perfect.
If you're listening, you can go back to the post and you can just go to Andrea's page from there. I think everything you said was beautifully said and so helpful. So you did a great job, and just for being so vulnerable and coming on here and talking to people, we really appreciate it.
I think that's one of the gifts that I was given through this, is that I can share it with others.
Mm-hmm.
Makes her stay alive. It keeps her memory going.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Andrea, so much. And everyone else, we will see you next week. Bye.
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 Thank you for listening to Boss Ladies and Babies. If you like this episode, be sure to rate, review, and leave us some feedback.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and join the conversation in our Facebook group at Boss Ladies and Babies.
And until next time,
Stay bossy.